All right. Dating a guy. You kiss, you embrace, you cuddle. How far do you think is
How far is too far?
right? That's the question I always ask. And so what's your opinion on physical interaction, intimacy with unmarried Christian couples?
I think it depends.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll go for say it depends because I think I did a video on this where I was saying that how far is too far would depend on how far you can go. And we're not pushing the limits because how I think it works is that you have actually having sex at the end of the spectrum and then you have all of the other hold on. Then you have the other things on this side of the spectrum. So there's no kissing or no hugging, or some people have a no cooking rule in a day. Like some people say that cooking is an intimate act. Seriously, I've heard it. I've heard it that they're not cooking together until they're married. Is people have these boundaries. So I think that the boundaries are at this end of the spectrum. I've always said it's a slippery slope. The closer you go down to the end of the spectrum, this is where the analogy I have is where you kind of have the devil down here, so like a fork. So the closer you go from this slope to you have the no kissing and no hugging and the no cuddling and all of that. The closer you go here is the closer to committing the fornication that you're going, right? So you should know how far you're going to go to slide. And why would you plan to go? Why would you plan to slide? It's like you're going down the slide and you plan to slide, right? So that's why I say it really depends. It really depends on you as a person. I don't believe in giving cookie cutter formulas because cookie cutter formulas will not work for everybody. They will not work. And I've always said, a lot of the people who used to come up and I say, oh, I never hug, I never kiss, them did for 6 months and then married. Bingo. And I said that shadily and unapologetically because I don't like when people come online and they talk about what they never do. And the real truth is there are certain physical interactions, hugging, kissing, whatever, going out together, going over. There are certain things that you can hold out for so long. So after 6 months, 2 months, 3 months, fine. You see them, everybody going to the chapel very happily, right? And then they come and you make these, if you do a quick YouTube search and all of those people who said they never touch, them never hold hands, all of them got married within 2 weeks. So you find that different people have different things that they like, different boundaries that they put up. Like I remember I had a boundary when I was in college that I wouldn't, any guy come in my room, I would leave my room door open. So I was living on dorm and I would not close that door because I knew that I needed that boundary.
Right.
So I would not close the door. And then it came to a point where I wouldn't even allow somebody out the room. Your boundaries will also depend on what you're going through at the time. Yeah. So some females, you're going through ovulation or some people have different urges at different parts of their cycle. So you have to be honest with yourself about when certain things can happen. Sometimes you can't even give somebody a hug. Sometimes you can't even hold hands, depending on what you're going through. So how far is too far really will depend on you. It really will depend on you and your conscience. I do also, as much as I dare being shady about people who get married quickly, I am not a very big advocate of very long courtships either, and very, very long, because them something that gets in trouble, because biologically, you really can hold out on certain things for so much longer. And it gets harder the older you get. It gets harder the longer the relationships get. So as shady as I'm being, they're doing the thing that they're supposed to be doing. You start when you're sure that, okay, you're ready to get into a relationship. And I don't feel like people should go over 2 years, personally, especially if you're not in high school. Like some people are anomalies and they'll go a little longer. Like I'll tell myself, I'm an anomaly. If I could do my life over again, possibly I would start dating later in life. But I mean, at the end of the day, that never happened. So of course, I'm still at the battlefield. But at the end of the day, I don't think that this long, and I guess maybe we can touch on that later on, but it really impacts the relationship. The longer it is, the harder the physical interactions get. But I don't believe in cookie cutter formulas at all, because I think cookie cutter formulas will not apply to everybody. And sometimes we do them for the wrong reasons. So we've decided, let's say, for instance, you have a couple that decided we're not kissing until marriage, or we are not cuddling until marriage, or we're not. I know I had a friend who they decided that even if we're out on like a group trip or whatever, they, no matter what happens, they're not sleeping in the same room. Even if it's two separate beds, they're not sleeping in the same room. Okay. And I mean, personally, that's a boundary that I believe that you have to set them boundaries there sometimes, right? But then at the end of the day, if somebody trapped outside and it's raining, are you going to say, oh, because you did watch something on YouTube and the something on YouTube did say you're not supposed to stay in the same room, what are you going to do? So it's something that really, really boils down to the relationship that you have with God, the relationship that you have with your partner, and you have that conversation. Because there are a lot of gray areas in the Bible. And there is a girl on YouTube called God is Gray. I don't know if you've stumbled upon her. I'm not promoting her channel. I'm not promoting her channel. Well, kind of low-key, but she has some views, and sometimes when you met some of the conversations that she has some views on premarital sex. She has some views on even getting pregnant outside of marriage and stuff. And when you really look into it, you can really see that you can view things from a different perspective, right? And you're viewing these things from a different perspective. You don't necessarily agree, but at the end of the day, you will be convicted based on your conviction and what you and God sit down and talk about. So when it comes down to like personal conviction over these little things, I think it's very personal. I think it comes down to you and God. And I think convictions now, it's not a conviction that you have because you haven't been studying. It's a conviction that you have because you haven't been praying, you haven't been listening to advice. It's not that type of conviction I'm talking about. It's a conviction that you get after studying, after talking to people, after praying about it, after sometimes even fasting about it. And that's what you've come to. Then when judgment day come, so that would be my best answer for that.
I like that you said that, you don't do the cookie cutter type thing, because not only is everybody different, the fact that everybody's different means that every union is different.
Yes.
Meaning my relationship with Sam is going to be different from my relationship with Pam, right?
Yeah.
And not only that, we are constantly growing, right? So my relationship and changing. So my relationship with Pam when I'm 25 is different from my relationship with Pam when I'm 27, right? Yes. So it's as you said, the cookie cutter thing, like this one rule, it can't do that to apply to every situation. So,
I know people want the rule. So if you're a person watching this and you want a rule, then I say stay on the other side of caution. If it's something that you can do and you want to put up a no kissing rule, no, it never hurt nobody yet. Last week I had a conversation with my friends and we were talking about the whole fact that I stumbled upon a series of videos and a series of conversations about people who genuinely believed that the Bible did not say sex before marriage was a sin, right? And it was because they were saying that when you look at what marriage was in the Bible, it really wasn't this big old white ceremony. And it was from the perspective of also saying that when you look at the principle behind it, it really was to stop promiscuity and not necessarily one man and one woman thing. And there's a lot more I can go into about that perspective. I don't agree with that perspective, first of all. So let me just get that out there. I don't agree with that perspective. And my friend, she said, but has it ever hurt anybody? Like to abstain and wait? It has never hurt anybody. But you have seen how thinking that person is your person and then you do it. And then you have to readjust because it never worked out. And the only thing that you really have that is safe is that ceremony in front of witnesses, in front of people, So it will be the same thing. Putting up strong boundaries, it never hurt nobody. So if you are somebody who wants a cookie cutter answer, then I say do the extreme always.
I think persons, not just in this area, but probably especially in this area, they want to focus on the rules and not the principle.
There we go.
Right. So
bravo.
They want to focus on, well, is kissing a sin? No,
Yeah.
it's not sin. The Bible is saying, oh, okay, sin.
Yeah. Tick.
Is fondling a sin. The
Yeah,
Bible
tick.
doesn't know that. Tick.
Yeah, tick.
And then they can go into like oral, this, that is oral
Mhm.
sex, and all that kind of stuff. But I think if we look at the actual principle of what sex is and what sexuality is,
Meant for, yeah.
what it's meant for, what does it mean, what is it? So it's not just these are okay, but these are wrong. But if you focus on actually what it is and what it's
Yeah.
meant for, I think that will help in actually being able, as you said, if you're gonna go the safe side, I think that mentality will help in terms of thinking about what sex is, what God wants for us. And this was something that's helpful for me.
Mhm.
We have to, I know we say God loves us and we say that like all the time. And so it just kind of passes through the air and it's just like, yeah, God is love, God loves us. But like sometimes we don't really understand what that means. And we don't understand that like the pleasure that we want and the joy that we want and whatever, God wants that for us, right?
Mhm.
I remember the day that I learned that Eden, like the Garden of Eden, the word Eden actually means pleasure, right?
Oh, I never
That's
knew
what,
that.
that's what the word means. Like God literally made a place for man and named it pleasure. Like that's God's intention for us. And when I
Mhm.
learned that, I had to like, I was watching a sermon. I had to like pause the sermon and just like apologize to God immediately for like just messing up his plans for me. Right? Like legit. Like we have to realize that these things that we're running down to get illegitimately,
Yeah.
God
He
wants us
wants them for us legitimately.
right, and it'll
Yes.
be so much better. It's like a mango upon a tree, but the mango green, and if
Mm,
just
that
want to pick
time.
the mango right now because we just want the mango, and he's like, no, wait, like it's gonna get better, like wait, but we just want to pick that mango right now. So I feel like understanding who God is,
Mhm.
understanding what He wants for us, and understanding that his plans for us are better than our plans for ourselves. And what
Mhm.
that really means, I think that will go a long way in helping us with these.
For sure. And the Bible said better to marry than to burn. It never lie. Never lie. And I did a whole live on it, or whole Instagram live on what it really means. It doesn't mean that your marriage should be built on sex at all. But what it does mean that if all the other things are in place, why do we allow society to pressure us to say, okay, you have to have the $2.5 million to put up this ceremony because it shows that you've reached a stage in life? That don't make no sense, right? Because if I know a couple, and I can say this public because they have shared their testimony publicly. When they decided to get married in school, all of we look on them like we say, we no crack. Because we couldn't understand. But they understood God's purpose for their marriage and God's calling on their lives. And they never allowed any of us. They never cared what we wanted to say. Because we knew that they were together, but we think that they would have waited until at least them finished, but they didn't. Right? But God knew that He needed their marriage for a purpose, and God knew that possibly if He allowed them to continue, maybe they would lose their relationship with Him. So they went ahead and they did it, no matter what we had to say, no matter what anybody else had to say. And I mean, now they give the testimony, and it's like a thing where I always tell them that I respect them for it, respect them for making that bold step in a situation, in a place where everybody look on them like them and say, no, you're rushing it. Because we think that we have to have this big lavish ceremony and we have to have this amount of money, but it's far from that. It's more than if two people are ready, if spiritually they're ready, if they're compatible, if economically they can see how they can make it work. It's not a lavish life, but they can see how they can make it work. But they're waiting because they need to wait on society to say yes. And because they're waiting, then they're now predisposed to all of these other sexual temptations that naturally come along, right? And then they're fighting with this sexual temptation. They're fighting it, they're battling the spiritual life down for it. Then if that's the thing, then no, you better to go get married. You better to go ahead.
All right, Zara, I have a question for you. You're the only female in this conversation, so you're gonna represent your gender right now, right?
Sure.
All right. I've noticed this many times. So a female can meet a guy, right? And see some potential and try to see where it goes. Maybe from some days in, maybe some weeks in, maybe a month in, you realize this isn't the guy for me, right? And decide, no, this isn't gonna work out. Alright, that's okay. A guy can meet a female, right? And see some potential. Let's see where this can go, right? Maybe a weekend, maybe a couple of days, maybe a month in, he might be like, nah, this isn't the one for me, and end the situation. He's a player. He was cheating me on. He never see us. He doesn't want this, whatever. Like, why is it so hard for females to accept that maybe the guy he just didn't see you as the girl for him? Like, why does, if he walks away from the situation, you have to now attack his character? Like, talking about that, I don't know if you've experienced that. Maybe not for you, but like seen that, witnessed that kind of thing.
We date wrong. I've experienced it personally. We date wrong. We don't know how to date properly, but for both females and males, as soon as somebody comes with it, we're together. And it shouldn't be like that. There should be a phase where you're getting to know the person, and a phase where you're very transparent and you're very open and you're very honest. Now, what happens is that sometimes these men aren't honest. So they aren't honest, and because they aren't honest, we have expectations, and that's where it falls down. Because we have these expectations because you weren't clear that this is what you're doing. You seem as if you come like a long time you outbends me, and you come in and you say, I want to start something. The approach was never, unless the approach was initially from the beginning to tell me, yo, I'm just fishing around.
No,
dating casually.
In a sense, you're kind of doing exactly what I described. In a sense, let me make sure I'm clear. Let me make sure I'm clear. The guy was genuine, when he saw this female. He saw the female, right?
And he told her straight up that just getting to know people.
No, he wants to get to know her.
Okay.
Right? All right. She got Hagley Park AY. He went to Hagley Park AY. They met. He finds her physically attractive. They had a good conversation. He's like, right? They exchanged numbers. So at that point, he's as interested as a guy can be after a first conversation.
Okay.
Right? 2 weeks pass of them talking, communicating. He's observing, she's observing, he's observing. A month passed, but after a month and you get to know more, you realize, you know what, for whatever the reasons are, I don't think this is the one. And he ends it. I've seen where, and I've experienced where, the mere fact that the guy is the one who ended, in her opinion, him that lead me on, him never serious, him never want to use me, that kind of thing. And I feel like males are just expected. If a female just change her mind, you just need to accept it. If a female says she doesn't want this, you just have to accept it, whatever. Whereas females, a lot of the time, if the male does that, not interested anymore, whatever, doesn't see as the one, then there comes a personal attack on the guy where he was never serious from get-go, in her opinion.
Yeah, and it's because we date wrong. So when I say we date wrong, it doesn't mean that the guy is on the guy's side as well, but it's because we have already, sometimes as females, and this is something that I've spoken about openly as well, we see the guy and we already have planned the wedding and the matching colors for the kids. So we aren't very open-minded, so we don't accept what the reality is. You never say yes, nobody is your person until they have officially said, okay, and if they've decided that they want to change their mind, you're not married until they're married. You're not fully committed ever until you go in front of the altar. So we do it the entire thing wrong, and it's because the world changed what courting was, of course, because courting was very patriarchal, where your father give you to somebody and whatever. Then after the 1940s, roaring 40s, when people, especially women, started becoming free, then women wanting to go do their own thing. So when we, as a church now, we try to figure out what Christian dating is, and it's hard to blur the lines because no, that type of dating that the world knows of dating involves sex. It involves a lot of physical intimacy. It involves boom, bam, thank you, ma'am, and move on. That's what it involves. But then we, in this getting to know phase, without that, sometimes that is included. Sex is included. It shouldn't be, but it is. Then it's so hard to blur the lines because now we feel as if, all right, we dated and now we're supposed to get married. But it's not supposed to be like that. Both men and women supposed to have the opportunity to meet people, get to know people, and decide whether or not they want this. And yes, women get a little bit emotional about it because we don't face the reality. And I know that for sure because I've been in this situation where I don't face the reality. So you'd think that because you think good, you are all that, say you're good, your mother good child, all that and a bag of chips, and this boy come tell me say I'm not interested, excuse you.
Yeah.
So it does something to us, but it is because we haven't opened our minds. We haven't opened our minds to what the process should be like. And because we don't open our minds, we allow ourselves to be disappointed. That's just the harsh reality. So we start planning the wedding from we meet the guy. And we want him to fall into line and he's not falling into line. It messes up the plans. And it's because we're doing it all wrong. So it's not something that we do that I would say is correct. It's not supposed to be done. And I also think that honesty is very good. So being open, being transparent, a lot of times it's because sometimes leading on actually happens. When like sometimes the guy don't know someone lead on the girl too. Sometimes guys naive, them going, boy, no. That's one of the other thing. No, lead on the girl, not even realize.
But in the example that I gave, I don't think you can define it as leading on. Because to me, leading on is giving the impression that you want something, but you actually don't want it.
Right.
In this example, he was genuine until he changed his mind.
Yeah, and he has the opportunity even the day before the wedding to change his mind. Harsh, but that it is what it is. Even the day before, him can say.
I feel like men are just used to being rejected way more than females. So we just jumped it in.
That could be true.
Our rejection muscle is strong. And further rejection muscle just weak.
That could be true. That could be true. That could be true.
All right. You're dating a guy, right?
Now, in the next part, we're going to discuss in-laws. We're also going to discuss money. Like, what if the woman makes more money than the man? Check it out right here.